Good, you guys, I gotta tell you before I even start, when you get home, please do something with all this knowledge. Because I can see the sponges are getting just like soaking it up. Be sure to do something when you get home. I've been podcasting since 2005, and I actually, Chris just mentioned how at Podfest I was out of a job. Because of my podcast, I got a job in Lincoln. Because of my job, I got a job as the podcasting director at the New Media Expo when there was a New Media Expo. So that's just a little, there's more about me, but that's the boring stuff. We'll get to that later. My slide has taken on a whole new life here, you'll see here in a second. What if I wanted to start a TV show on ABC, starring Dana Carvey, and unfortunately at this point, yeah, you guys know where this is going, the head writer at the time, oh geez, was this guy, Louis C.K., who's in a little bit of hobble, yeah. When I saw that yesterday, I was like, oh, I'm not changing my slide. Stephen Colbert was on the show, he was unknown at that point. Steve Carell, and then Robert Smigel, who is the voice of Triumph the Insult Dog, and he's worked on Conan, all the fun little cartoons on SNL. Yeah, huge. Do you think that would be successful if we got all those people together? All right. Oh, by the way, it's going to go on after Home Improvement, which at the time had like 20 bazillion people watching it. And Dana said, hey, let's do something like they used to do in the 50s, where it's like, it's the Dinah Shore Show, brought to you by Chevy. So it was like this whole sponsor thing. So he said, all right, we'll start off with Taco Bell as a sponsor, and then later they had Mountain Dew, and then eventually it went down to Diet Mug Root Beer. But they did a really big mistake, and I've got a little video here that I want to play for you. Let me get this. So he decided, his very first sketch was, hey, I'm going to be edgier than Saturday Night Live. We're going to get away from those restraints. So they decided to do an imitation of President Clinton at the time. And it was going to be a Kyler Jenner Clinton, and he had like a pig. He had like teeth. And there were kittens and dogs and babies all suckling on the then President Clinton, who also happened to have a butt shaped like Donald Duck. This is their very first skit of a brand new show. And this is kind of how it went. Yeah. Stephen Colbert cannot stop laughing. And then eventually... Yeah. Now with podcasting, you don't have a lead-in audience, but they didn't know who their audience was. That's one of the biggest mistakes, is who are you talking to? And some people just like, oh, I'm talking to everybody. Well, that's just not going to work. You've got to figure out who your audience is. It's one of the biggest mistakes. Your first impression, oh my goodness. I listened to a show this morning, who will go nameless. They were 5 minutes in and had not gotten to the topic yet. They were just chitting and chatting, and I'm like, ah. Now, some reports say that, I don't know if it's Americans or everybody has, somewhere between 8 and 9 seconds of a attention span. This one said 12 seconds, this one said 30. And then a British study said basically how we apply our attention to different tasks depends very much about what the individual brings to that situation, and they meant both sides of that. Depends on what the person listening is doing, but also depends on what you're bringing to the table. Because if you're boring, they're not going to stick around with it. And so, I actually do a podcast called the Podcast Rodeo Show, where I grab a random podcast and see how long I can hang on. And I did it as a joke. I was going to test a new service, and I was like, I need to make a podcast for this service. I want to see what it's like. And I was amazed at the number of just absolute train wrecks. And so, I have a picture of a bus here. And you'll notice there's no, 13th Street Northwest. Would you get on that bus? No. And what happens, and how would you feel if you're on that bus if it said, hey, 13th Street Northwest, and you got on, and all of a sudden you're expecting them to turn left? And you get on the bus, and they're like, wait, aren't we supposed to go? Wouldn't you get me off this bus? It's not going. So your beginning of your show is, people are tuning in for a reason. And so many times, I think, and I'm guilty of this myself, it's the chit-chat. Like, hey, Randy, how are you doing? Good, Dave, how are you? Well, it's 75 and sunny here. We don't care. I tuned in for whatever the topic is. So this is an actual show, and it starts off good. Explain what the show is. Here's our host. Here's what we do. And then when it comes time, wait to where this goes. It goes right into the wall. And this, again, is your first impression. Because remember, only about 40% of America has heard a podcast. So that means we got 60% that are going to get on board, and this is your first impression. Like, oh, let's try this show. And I'm sorry, this is as loud as it's going to get. I'll see what I was putting the mic by the speaker here. But I think there's a little speaker back there.
Welcome to Think on This.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to Think on This, episode 5, Mind and Civilization. This is the show where we pick a random topic that of interest to us and break it down and get you thinking. I'm John Montgomery, and joining me, as always, is Austin Bradford. What's up, Austin?
Hey John, how's it going?
It's going well.
I was trying to think of something to talk about in this intro, because I usually try to talk about This is actually a very short recording for us. Not a lot has happened since the last time we talked. Something that was cool was right before we started recording, I had gotten up to take care of a few things before we sat down. And John, what was the song that you made? Played through my headphones while I was whatever.
Run around by Blues Travel.
Yeah, so I'm actually relieving myself in the bathroom. I'm staying because it's going to take a while.
Yeah. And remember, he said something cool happened. This is the cool thing. He went to the bathroom. All right, I won't subject us to any more of that. But that's your first impression. So, I don't know, I've never heard somebody say, hey Dave, you know what I really hate about your show? What? You get to the point too quick. I've never had somebody say that. So, the other one is your podcast name. And this is where you think you're going to be clever or something. And I had a friend of mine started a show called Phone Time. And I go, you have F-O there. Some people might think that means something that's not entirely, are you sure? Oh man, my audience will know this. That'll be great. I'm like, all right, well you know your audience better than I do, so okay. So about a month later he calls me back up, hey Dave, can you change your podcast name? And I'm like, oh, yeah, we can do that. So he changed it to Ham Radio 360. Oh, because people were typing into iTunes or search or whatever, Ham Radio Podcast. Well, Phone Time wasn't coming up because there's no name of it. his numbers tripled. So sometimes we want to get cool, and it's like, no, my shows are called Weekly Web Tools, Logical Weight Loss, School of Podcasting. You don't really have to think about that. Then, once you get your name, apparently you fall in love with it. So here you are in iTunes, and here's the name of the show, here's the name of the show, and your episode titles are your headlines. These are the things that really pull people in, because you've got their attention, and their awesome, eye-catching head titles are things like, here's the name of the show, episode 75, name of the show, and this is such a bad idea. I don't know if the new version of the podcast app still does this, but the previous version used to take out the name of your show because Apple goes, you shouldn't be doing this, you're wasting your headline. And everybody knows how much people just Google search episode 75. So, and this is like a true crime thing. This should be something like, the butler did it in the den with a candlestick or something, right? To get you to pull in. So don't waste your headlines. That can really, you've got their attention. Now, give them a reason to click. And I just don't get excited about episode 75. This is people panic. And they're like, okay, I click publish, and I immediately run over, and oh my gosh, it's not in iTunes. You do not upload things to iTunes. iTunes is a mirror. So if here's my podcast, the iTunes will kind of mirror that. It takes, for it to show up in the actual listing, it takes 24 hours. I beg of you, do not lose your cookies on this. Subscribe to your own show. Number one, it's a download, and at least you got one, right? And you'll see when your download comes, everything is working fine, even if it's not here. So it may be a case, it's weird, where you go, wait, my new episode's not there, and then you click on subscribe, and there it is. So it's a really easy mistake to make, but a lot of people, and I mean seriously, lose their cookies. And so no, iTunes is just reflecting whatever that is. If you haven't seen this lately, find me in iTunes. The podcast app, which unfortunately has the majority of the listeners use that, gives you a whopping four results when you search. And when you go see all, it shows you a whopping 10. So saying find me in iTunes is, they're not going to find you unless you're, whatever, This American Life or something like that. What you need to do is have directions on your website of exactly how to subscribe to your show. Because Popular Demand says ratings and reviews do nothing for your rankings. It's total number of downloads, total number of subscribers. You need to teach people how to subscribe. And you can't do that by saying find me in iTunes. Have a link directly to your show on iTunes, and then have a screenshot. When you click on this is what's going to show up, and then walk them through that process. Copycats. You are never going to out John Lee Dumas, because it comes to him very naturally. If you meet John Lee Dumas, that dude is stoked to meet you. He's an intense dude, super nice guy, but I've just seen so many people, and you can get inspired by other people and go, ooh, I like what they did. I'm a musician, that's one of my other hobbies. And I will go, ooh, what if we took like Zeppelin and James Brown and put them together? That would be cool, right? You can do that, but I've seen people literally will steal somebody's show. Like the exact same questions, just don't be a copycat, because it's just not going to work. Asking the wrong questions. These are the questions that people ask that So number one, want to swap reviews. So I start a show, hey, I'll give you a 5-star review if you give me a 5-star review. Sounds good, right? The question you should be asking is, why isn't your audience reviewing your show? And if you go, I don't know, you need to go back and figure that out, because in theory, there's this thing called the Law of Reciprocity. If I do enough nice things for you, you should feel compelled to do one nice thing for me. And if you're not inspiring that in your audience, your show probably stinks. I mean, nobody wants to hear that your baby is ugly, but you should. And also, again, are you making it easy to leave a review? Or are you just saying, find me in iTunes and leave a review? Well, there's a problem right there. So this is, and I see people, I saw this happen in a Facebook group, and it was like watching a virus spread. Everybody was just on board, because number one, people think reviews jam you up the charts. Well, there's a thing, there used to be a thing called American Idol, right? Somebody named me season 6 winner of American Idol. Exactly. Getting to the top of the charts doesn't really mean success. So that's something that just goes, no, that's not the way to do it. How do I get a sponsor? I'm on episode 3. How do I get a sponsor? You monetize your audience. Step 1, build an audience. So a lot of times people are getting hung up on that. Hey, what's your name? You want to be on my show? Because I do a show every, 4 times a week, and I need a heartbeat to interview. You are the person between you and your audience that if some sort of bad content is coming your way, it's your job to swat that out of here. And you're just like, I just need somebody to interview because I promised them an episode every, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, it's Friday, and no. So that could be really bad. This is not made up. How many downloads did I get in the last hour? When I started working at Lincoln, I heard how people obsess over stats. This is no joke. Like, wait a minute, I got 200 in the last hour, and this one I only got 150. Is there something wrong? Looking at your stats does not make them grow. Just, I don't know if some people think that. And then this one, how many people downloaded episode 6 in Germany last Thursday? Now, I made that one up, but it's seriously, I'm not far from it. And I always want to go 4. Now, please tell me, what are you going to do with it? Because unless I'm a comedian that wants to tour Germany or something, I always wonder, like, what are you doing with that information? Should I upgrade my $200 microphone to a $300 microphone? Because it's tax season, I just got my tax check. And I want to quote Dan Class, who does a show called The Bitter Hall of Fame podcaster, Dan Class. And he said, if you go to a comedy club, and there's Chris Rock and Jerry Seinfeld, whoever else comes out, and maybe you like one better than the other, they all use the same microphone. It's not the tech. Like if you go from, unless you're using a tin can with string, and you go to a, ATR 2100, that'll help, because when your audience has to be like this to listen to your show because it's harsh or it's nasty, that's when you need to upgrade your microphone. This is not going to do it. It's not the tech. How many downloads equals success? This breaks my heart. It really, somebody like, how's your show going? This is the most fun I've ever had. It's great. And we had somebody emailed us last week, and it was awesome, and we did this thing, and then they'll go look at somebody else's stats. And it's like, I'm melting! Ah! And I'm like, wait a minute. The number of downloads you had last week was awesome, and you were happy. But you compared yourself to somebody else, and now it's like, oh, I suck. And I'm like, no, you don't. It's, oh. So this is the worst thing you can do. If you're happy and you know it, do it. Right? It's like, let's say I like flying kites. Some people are like, I don't have a sponsor, I don't have this. Okay, when I'm flying a kite, does somebody come up and go, hey, nice kite? Yeah, thanks. How much money are you making with that thing? I like flying, This drives me nuts, and I'm sure Podbean will chime in on this. There are people at Podbean that will answer your questions about Podbean. There are people at Libsyn that will answer questions about Libsyn and Blueberry and all the other people. They're not on Facebook. They're actually like, I'm going to guess support at podbean.com, support at libsyn.com, but you'll go ask Facebook. And that's just, because the problem when you do this is you get the wrong answer. Because the people on Facebook are not the experts. And I'm not sure why people do that, but that's the wrong question. That's the wrong place to ask the question. All right, so what should I be asking? Why am I podcasting? If you don't know why, if you can't explain the why, you're never going to make it through the how. And I always let people like, well, I want to do a show about this and that, and it's going to do this, and then I'll go, it'd be cool if I could make some money. I'm like, whoa, what was that last thing? Well, yeah, I'd like to make some money. Well, we need to know that, because then you need to restructure your podcast to have a call to action or something like that. We need to know why. How do I get to be good? We're asking like, ooh, how do I get on a network? How do I get a sponsor? How do I get, first question should be, am I good? Seinfeld took like 9 years to get on the Tonight Show, and then he did like another 7 appearances. The whole time he's just getting better and better and better. How do I know if I'm good? You ask your audience. They'll kind of let you know. A lot of times they're like, I did this one segment, and they're all like, hey, that was really cool, the thing you did. Please don't do that again. They'll let you know. does my audience hang out? Because how are you going to know what to put in your show if you don't know what your audience is talking about? You know, what do they want to hear? Have I made it easy to consume and share my podcasts? This is one that, again, we want more subscribers, we want more downloads, but you go to your website and there's no kind of share button, there's no subscribe buttons. But another one is you'll have a subscribe button to iTunes. There is this other thing called an Android phone that the last time I heard is like there's 5 times as many Android phones as, you know, Apple phones. And I always wonder, is Apple so big because we all say, find me on iTunes and subscribe? Or if we've been doing the same thing for Android, would there be that many more people? We don't talk about Android, and so consequently, we don't have a lot of Android downloads. I think if we start promoting that, we could. Are there any podcasts I should be networking with? Some of my best friends are my competition. And here's the fun thing, people go, well, there's no competition in podcasting. And you're like, no, because it would be if I was on radio, and we're both on at 7:30 on Thursday. But you can listen to me on Monday, you can listen to Daniel on Tuesday, Daniel J. Lewis from the Audacity podcast. You can listen to Ray Ortega from the Podcaster Studio on Wednesday. You can listen to Mike Dell on Thursday. You can listen to Jennifer on Friday. Right? There's no, and what's great about this is, if I cut these people out of my life, they have the same passion I do. And there are things that, like, if you really want to go deep in the woods into video, I'm going to point you at Ray. I know a little bit about video, but Ray's like major video. And we kind of cross-promote each other's shows because we don't have that scarcity mentality. We think there's enough downloads for everybody. Are there more emails, tweets, or comments to reply to? Well, first of all, you have to get comments. This is another one I love. I'm not getting any interaction on my, apparently I'm going to turn into Peter Brady here. My voice is cracking because my voice is shot. So I sound like, nobody likes a Charlie in a box. But I love people that say, I'm not getting any interaction, and you go to their website, and it's like ridiculously hard to leave any kind of comment. Like their only way to connect with them is Twitter. Well, not everybody uses Twitter. I know that's like, what? But not everybody. So make it easy for people to contact you. And then when they do, this is where you stoke the fires. This is somebody who really likes you. And when you email them back, it's weird because you know that I know that you know that you're just you and I'm just me. But when you email them back, it's from the host. It's like, oh my gosh, it's that guy. And he emailed me back. And they're going to go tell 2 friends. If somebody leaves you a voicemail, play it on the show if you have permission. I'm telling you, I have clip after clip after clip of people saying, I couldn't believe it when I heard my voice on your show. And what do? They go tell their friends. Check this out, I'm on the show. Stoke the fire. That's your sales force, your audience. Mr. and Mrs. Consultant, where can I hear your show? This is something I just threw in last night because there was a great article on how to start a podcast with really bad information in it. And I went, all right, took the name of the author and put the name of the author in the word podcast and hit it in Google. Not a thing. 0, none. So be careful out there because there's a lot of advice because podcasting's getting bigger and bigger. With this person, I was like, I don't know how she's giving advice on podcasting because she doesn't have one. What am I going to give up so I can have time to podcast? This is something, now it's easy for me. I live in Cleveland. The Cleveland Browns are 1-21. We refer to our stadium as the Factory of Sadness. So I don't watch football on Sundays anymore. Sunday is my podcast day. But it does take time. It does take time, and you're probably going to have to give something up. So, and I think for me, it was originally TV. I watch a lot of TV. I gave up sports. But the things you get back are more friends. You get a purpose in some cases. So that's something you have to think about. If you're a farmer, step 1 is plant. Step 2, water and fertilizer, things like that. Step 3 is harvest. I see a lot of people that try to combine step 1 and 3. I'm going to launch my show and try to get sponsors immediately. And I'm not saying that's not impossible, but anybody here have kids? And how long did it take you to have the child? 9 months, right? That's to make a baby, and you want to get 3,000 listeners, it's going to take a little longer. And we understand that because that's the way babies are. Well, that's the way it works in when you're creating content. It's not going to happen overnight. And so there's a radio guru named Valerie Geller, and the book is Beyond Powerful Radio. And she says, managers and owners, meaning of radio stations, hate to hear this, but in my experience, it takes about 3 years to build a talk station. And most people go, oh, when they hear that. Natalie Ekdahl does the Biz Chicks. She's now just slamming it out of the park, coincidentally. About 3 years in. Darren Dake does a show about coroners, like real crime scene investigation, making 6 figures. Coincidentally, about 3 years. Jean-Lee Dumas got his first sponsor after 6 months of a daily show. You do a weekly show. Wait a minute, that's 180 episodes after 6 months because he did a daily show. 180 divided by 12 is what, oh, that's right, about 3.5 years. So, this is why I say start with a lot of passion. Because originally you're going to be talking to nobody, which is good because you're finding your voice. But just keep going at it. She also said 3 years after, there's a station in, I believe in San Francisco, they changed format. And she said 3 years after it signed on, KFI became a, quote, overnight success. It took 3 years. And again, that's Valerie Geller from Young Powerful Radio. The other thing that, as we start to wrap up here, when you start out your podcast, you might be going this way, and your audience decides, I really wish you would rather talk about that. And that's okay as long as this is something you want to talk about. And I hear people, I had somebody, they started a daily show, and just be very, that's a lot of work. And her audience was saying, look, you are feeding me with a fire hose. This is too many episodes. But she had somehow read a recipe that said if I do a daily show and do this and do that, money will fall from heaven, and life, and she was not gonna, I'm like, well, how many times have you heard this? I don't know, probably 4 or 5. I go, 4 or 5 people have emailed you, different people? I go, do you know what that actually represents in your audience? But she thought her podcast was a statute, that you can't change it. No, I started in this direction. No, you're gonna, it will change over time. It's natural. And that's okay. So, and what you do is you will change something, just like this was a pie, or what is this anyway? Spirit and Truth Sabbath bread. Okay, I just grabbed it. Yeah. But, when you feed food to somebody, they go, oh, this is too much salt. We don't go, oh, that's it. I'm not cooking again. Okay. You tweak it, you bring it back out. Right? So it's, you'll do things that don't work. Then you'll do some things. My favorite is I will put out an episode, I'm like, this is not my best work, but publish, And you will have people go, that was the best thing ever. And then other episodes, I'm like, I can't wait until they hear this. Publish! And it's just crickets. So, feel free to tweak as you go along. I said I'd leave the boring stuff to the end, and then we'll take some questions if we have any time. I'm mainly known for the School of Podcasting.com. I like to podcast about podcasting. On Saturday morning, I do a live call-in show, Ask the Podcast Coach. Podcast Review Show is a show I do with Eric K. Johnson, which that show became an idea because my audience kept saying, would you listen to my podcast? Well, there's only 24 hours in a day, so if I got to give up more stuff, I'm going to have to charge for it. So that's actually a service I offer. Podcast Rodeo Show I mentioned earlier. Power Podcasting, if you can't remember all those, remember Power Podcasting because that's my network where all that is. I did write a book called More Podcast Money. It needs updated because it doesn't even mention Patreon because I wrote it a couple years ago. And then I'm launching a course in January called Podcasting in 6 Weeks. If you want hand-holding along the way, I would be happy to hold your hand. But thank you very much. I'd be happy to take questions.